This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, you're invited to like and share them on Facebook. 6:05 on a Wednesday night, time for the African American scene, presented each week at this time by Howard Insurance of Port St. Lucie and hosted by Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Always glad to be with you here on a Wednesday night. Woo, what a jam-packed day today. Sunderland testified, and we got the Democratic debate on tonight. I'll tell you what, that's a whole mountain of stuff going on. Listen, we're going to have an open mic night tonight. I was supposed to have a couple of kids here who were contest winners from my fraternity, and they haven't showed up, so we're going to carry on with the show. Fortunately, there's so much going on, I don't have to be too concerned about the usual research that I do before I get on here. But what I will do is I will continue with my American vision. And I've had some of you call in and talk about it, and I would still love to have your feedback. Share your American vision. I gave you mine. I'd like to hear from you. Now, I just finished reading all of it, so I'm not totally prepared, but I want you to grasp this for a second, and I will get back to it, if not next week, the week after. There is some people that have done some research that says the original Statue of Liberty was designed of a black woman. Ooh, I know that'll get some of you riled up there.
Wow, that's like some of the ancient Egyptian statues.
Yeah, the National Park Service has conducted investigation. It's gone on for a few years, and they even show a prototype of what the alleged original Statue of Liberty looked like. And I got to credit my uncle for doing this. My uncle bought this. He called me up. He was so excited. He said, "You have got to look at this." He said, "because I know you want to talk about it on your radio show." And he's right, after I read it. And they have pictures of what, in theory, the first Statue of Liberty looked like. The two gentlemen that were involved in the designing of the Statue of Liberty were abolitionists from France. So they were anti-slave people. And now, as the story goes, they give 4 plausible theories, and I'll get back, like I said, I'll get back to this in a couple of weeks, not next week, the week after, that the reason why it changed is because many of the white folks in the United States would have found it objectionable to have a black lady Statue of Liberty. Ooh. So we'll get back to that because there's some details I want to share with you. And then I want to share with you some of the theories about why, what caused it. But now I will say, in all fairness, they have not been able to concretely prove that. But there is substantive information that it did exist, including some prototype drawings. But it's very interesting. It should be something that you might want to know about, and don't let your ego get in the way, because it's history. Okay, now there was the hearings today, and while I was working, fortunately I have 2 screens, so I was working on one screen, and on the other screen I was listening to the testimony of Sunderland. And before I go much further, I just want to say You wanted a businessman in the White House. He is the dumbest, most ridiculous person that I have seen just about in my lifetime. He violates all of the basic business principles that I learned as a corporate manager. And why am I saying that? I'm going to tell you why I say that. Whenever you disagree with him, he throws you under the bus. So as a consequence, he has leaks because people are leaking because they're trying to protect their backside in case he decides to turn on them. And then the people that are turning on him saying, no, I'm not going down with that ship because he won't stand by me. Boy, what don't you get about that? I mean, that is just so obvious. If you're a manager, you stand with your people, you support your people, you take an arrow for them if you have to. He doesn't do that. So guess what? They don't take arrows for him either. They leak stuff to the news, to TV stations, because they don't trust him.
You think there's an expected level of presidential etiquette?
Yo, absolutely. He's blown that all to pieces. But, you know, and that's part of my real frustration with him. But the one thing that I have learned through this ordeal, our democracy is very, very fragile. Because our democracy is constructed on a bunch of norms and past behavioral things that we accepted as matter-of-factly. And I'm reading this book now called Understanding the Constitution, written by this college professor, this legal college professor. And she's tearing down the Constitution, and it's really been some very interesting reading. But she points out that there's some real ambiguity in the Constitution, and a lot of that ambiguity is because there's been standard practices that we've done for 100 years. But he's come in and just ripped them all to pieces. And I find that kind of scary because there are things that I thought were just normal that just went with the job, and they're not. They were things that it has been expected of a president to do, and most presidents have abided by them, except for this president. So, but he is his own worst enemy. So what did he say about, listen, the guy Parnas, when they picked up Parnas and his partner as they were trying to leave the United States, and they approach him about Parnas, what does he say? I don't know who he is. I just took a picture with him. So now, guess what? Parnas wants to testify because Parnas was embarrassed and PO'd that he said he didn't know him, and they spent lots of time together. That's just stupid. God almighty, how can you be so dumb? You don't even try to protect the people that would help keep you protected. You just don't do that. You don't do that at all. Man, I'm telling you, you know, as a former Fortune 500 manager, corporate manager, man, I have gone into meetings and taken beatings because they wanted me to do something, to make my department do something that I thought was going to hurt my people. And I would be in that meeting taking that beating because if I don't protect them, if I just say yes, they get abused with a rule that just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And I'm telling you, our department secretary, he is just pathetic. He has not defended not one of his members, his employees. But anyway, if you have thoughts about what happened today, I won't belabor you with my thoughts. But I will ask this one question that I post on Facebook, and I got some pretty good responses. Are you an American or a Republican? Do you know the difference? Are you an American or are you a Republican? And do you know the difference? Do you know the difference between being an American and a Republican? If there's clearly a violation of the Constitution staring you in the face, are you going to defend that person because they're Republican, even if it's a violation of the Constitution and American principles? I'll let you answer that question. But anyway, so here's I've been on this for the last couple weeks, and I'm going to have to leave a little early tonight because Greg's got a game, and we have to bring on IRCC basketball. But I'm going to give you quick highlights of my American vision. Some of you have been listening. I've never gotten through the whole thing yet, but I'll be interested for you to share your vision with me. Here's my vision: health care for all people, regular vote for the presidential election, no more electoral college, law enforcement system that is fair and balanced, true free market economy, Democrats and Republicans can agree to disagree, an education system that acknowledges the contributions of all people. And I think that's so important because part of your self-esteem is built on who you are and who you understand yourself to be. A government not reluctant to help the least of these. Reduce military spending on hardware. Build affordable housing again. Notice I said again. Federal support for postgraduate schools and technical schools. Protect borders but allow pathway to citizenship. Undocumented vets should not be deported. Severe penalties for employers who hire undocumented workers. And I think I have one more here. Got a couple more here. Review and revise regulations. Not eliminate, review and revise regulations. And that's one I want to talk about because I think many conservatives have the whole thing wrong about regulations. But there are some things that need to be addressed. Fair, progressive taxation. That's another biggie. And finally, I think I have one more here. Yeah, that's it. Fair and progressive taxation. Yes, that's my final one. So that's my vision for America. Tell me what your vision is. Are there any of the things that I've said here that you would include in your vision? That would be fine with me if you think some of the things that I have to say make some sense. Let's talk about one of my visions for America is review and revise regulations. One of the things that I hear conservatives say all the time is how they hate regulations. And regulations are an impediment to the markets working as they should. Well, if you want to ask, I'm going to give you my honest assessment of this. Do some of the regulations go overboard? And I think now that I'm thinking about it, I think I talked about this last week or the week before. Some of the regulations do go overboard, but I want you to keep this in mind. Because I told this to a friend of mine, and after I told him this, he agreed with me 100%. Regulations don't come out of thin air. They are usually developed to resolve a problem that has been identified in our society. One of the best examples that I can give you is OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And they put together certain construction standards, like, the depth and width of steps in conjunction with construction. Now, that might seem like a really ridiculous thing, except if you go in some of these old houses and the steps down to the basement are so narrow for when there wasn't any construction, people fell and got hurt. Kids fell and got hurt. So now you have to build, when you build steps, they have to be to a certain standard. If you ever watch on HGTV, when they rehab a old house, oftentimes they may have to go in there and tear the steps out. Now, that's a regulation that was designed to help keep us safe. Now, I will give you an example of something that I think is overkill. You have to get a review of a floor installation. To me, okay, that's overkill. I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense to have a regulation for that. But here's here's something that's close to home. And I hope I didn't say this before, but I think I may have. We had the Chinese drywall problem here, especially in the Tradition area. Okay? We had Chinese drywall because when we were undergoing that boom, you couldn't generate the drywall in the United States fast enough, so they went there and bought it. And what happened? You had $300,000 and $400,000 houses that were completely destroyed with mold because of the defective nature of the drywall that they had imported from China, who does not have any building standards. Now, if that don't convince you, nothing will, because that's just the likelihood. I'm not going to say it could never happen. The likelihood of that happening in the United States is very slim because of what? Regulations. We have regulations that say if you're going to build drywall, it has to be built to a certain standard. Here's another area for you to keep in mind, and I think it's something unique to America. You get a defective crop, like, we had, I guess maybe 6 or 7 months ago, they had a fecal matter in lettuce, okay? Cliff's shaking his head. He remembers that.
Romaine lettuce, as a matter of fact.
Yes. They were able to tell us what lots that came from and what stores that went to keep you from eating that bad lettuce and getting sick. Now, maybe before that happened, you said to yourself, I don't know that that's necessary, but if you have a young kid whose system is not developed and they got a hold of that kind of lettuce and you just saved them because we had a regulation that detected that, I think that's awesome. Think about how awesome that is, that they're able to go and find the exact lot of the lettuce and tell you what stores it went to, so you know to avoid it. I think that's pretty awesome. So, well, be careful what you wish for when you say you want to do away with all regulation. And we got Brian on line 1. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to say welcome back, Cliff.
Oh, I wasn't gone that long.
Oh, man, we have missed you. I heard you last week and almost wanted to call just to say hello last week. But anyway, talking about the regulation, Rudy, earlier you said that you asked whether if someone violated the Constitution, whether you would support them or oppose them, or whether you would support them anyway based on your political party.
Okay.
So my question is to you, you're talking about regulation. Where in the Constitution does it give the federal government the authority to regulate the types of things that you're talking about?
The Constitution allows the Congress to make laws for the protection of the American society.
But
okay.
It only allows for what is delegated to be done by the U.S. by the federal government, and it specifically reserves to the state what hasn't been authorized by the Constitution.
Okay. Well,
interstate commerce is the only area that the U.S. government, the federal government, has the authority to regulate.
okay. So, are you saying that the examples I used are not interstate commerce?
Well, some of them may be.
Okay.
But other than, a lot of what happens and a lot of what the federal government is involved in has nothing to do with what the Constitution has authorized. They have greatly exceeded their authorization.
I don't think that I'm not prepared to agree with you on that. What I will say is this, and I said this at the outset. I do think sometime the regulations overdo it in an attempt to correct a problem for the American public. They overdo it, but I don't think that they have necessarily exceeded, because I think the Constitution allows them to make laws and create agencies that are in the best interests of the American people.
Well, you can say it's in the best interest of the American people, but if it doesn't deal with interstate commerce, it's outside of the authority of the federal government. That doesn't mean that a state government or a local government can't do something like that, but the federal government shouldn't have anything to do with most of what they do.
Okay, so
if we were to reduce the federal government to the scope that the founders intended, our federal budget would be axed. I mean, most of what the federal government does is not authorized to do.
Well, that's your opinion, and I respect that. But let me say this to you. If we were to reduce the federal government only to those areas that you deem appropriate and out of the purview of the federal government, my God, there'd still be slavery. There'd still be Jim Crow, because that's not commerce. So technically, there would be no way that the federal government would be able to enact laws to protect citizens against racial discrimination or
the primary function of government is to protect and defend innocent human life. And our founders, there obviously were the people in the North, the founders in the North, and they had to compromise with the founders in the South who supported slavery. Their states supported slavery. But they laid the groundwork. Thomas Jefferson laid the groundwork for the abolition of slavery when he drafted the Declaration, which originally actually had an anti-slavery clause in it, which that anti-slavery clause didn't apply. The southern states struck that, but it still said that we were endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yes, that's true.
Jefferson actually also wanted to have life, liberty, and property. The southern states struck property because they didn't want to give the rights to slaves to own property. But still, that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, he laid the groundwork, and abolitionists later successfully used that to argue for the abolition of slavery.
Well, we're straying off.
The abolition of slavery could have happened federally, and obviously it did happen federally, but that is a just and a legitimate view or legitimate function of government to protect life and to protect liberty.
Okay. All right, my friend. Well, thank you for calling.
You're welcome.
All right, and we got Steve on line one. Yes, sir. Yes, Steve.
I know you've got a heart to let me talk.
Okay.
It was my bad button
As long as you
finger.
don't start any nonsense, because if you start nonsense, I'm gonna hang up on you.
I'm not going to argue.
Okay, go
I'm
ahead.
not going to argue with you tonight.
Okay.
Hey, I'm getting a feedback in here, and my radio's off. So I have a list for you.
Okay.
Man, and here's the list. Every citizen gets the right to work with quality.
No, you're all just normal.
It doesn't sound like it's double on our end.
Yeah,
Okay, so
it's still doing it. If there's a delay, and then the delay is really hard to talk.
Okay, we're not here to comment on technical difficulties now, Steve. Keep on subject.
yeah, come on.
We can hear you very clearly,
ahead,
loud
what
and
you
clear
got?
and perfect.
I don't know what they're hearing out there, Louis.
Okay, so what you got?
Okay. Every citizen has the right to work with quality work and a quality job. Abolish unemployment. The right to rest and leisure. 7-hour work days for the majority. Annual vacations paid for the majority. Annual vacations days with pay and with annual vacation benefits. Right to maintenance of old age, sickness, even in the old age, sickness, or the right to. This is hard. Working. Are you getting double?
No, I'm not.
I just had a caller. The callers are hearing this mysterious phenomenon that's taking place.
Okay.
Let's see.
I'll try to. Maybe if I don't talk quite so loud, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Oh, we can hear you great. You
fine.
sound great.
Okay.
Yeah.
The right to education, elementary and higher education are free. Free vocational and tech, even farming. Women have equal rights, equal pay, and protection by the state. They will have social insurance and education. Mothers and childs will have pre-maternity and maternity leave with full pay. A network of maternity homes, nurseries, and kindergartens will be supplied. Equal rights, irrespective of nationality or race, in all spheres. If a violation occurs, it's punishable by law. Ensure citizens' freedom of conscience. That is for church and the separation of church, schools, and church schools, freedom of religion, and the freedom of anti-religion propaganda for all. To strengthen the social system, freedom of speech, press, assembly, even with demonstrations. The right as a worker unto the party with the unions and associated groups. No person to be arrested by court decision. And you will own a home you'll be taken care of. The right for asylum to foreign citizens. Every citizen has to be respected and respect the government and obey its laws. They are to safeguard all these rights as a duty. University military service is mandatory and sacred duty to defend the government with your life. Any of those bad?
No, I'm speechless.
Okay. I just read to you the 1938 USSR Constitution from Article 118 all the way through 133. And if you look at your list, your list has got a bunch of things that are the same on there. USSR only lasted 69 years.
So your point is that...
My point being is we have an example that when people are willing to sacrifice their rights for personal gain, the country will fall. Because equal rights does also means if not just the higher, everybody moves to the higher, but can it mean also everybody moves to the lower?
I get your point. That was a nice curveball. You read me the...
Because I've asked you to read it.
So you read me the basic fundamentals of the USSR Constitution, right? That doesn't sound like...
individual citizen.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like the way they've actually practiced the laws in Russia. But okay, I'll give you that. So you read it and you read right off of it. But I'm going to say this to you.
Okay.
You are of the opinion, and it's conservatives and generally of the opinion, that if we make people suffer enough, they will find answers. Okay? If you don't help them and you make them suffer, and you make them bend over backwards and break their back, eventually they'll find an answer, and then they won't be on the government dole. That is just ridiculous, because sometimes people need help. Now, if you weren't listening to me 2 weeks ago, I talked about this organization that helps people that are homeless in this area. And this lady in particular is homeless because her husband walked out on her and left her with her 2 kids. And she lives in a tent in the woods in Martin County, and she gets up and goes to work every day. And her kids get up from that tent, they study in that tent, and then they go to school every day. And the cost of getting on her feet will be somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000. I did the math on the show and explain to everybody how to come up with that.
You didn't help her?
And so the point that I'm trying to make is very simple. Do we continue for a person that's trying to do the right thing, are they deserving of help, or you just leave them in the tent until they can figure out how to get up out of the tent? Because what it would take for her to have a viable place to live, there's people living in houses right now that can't come up with the money that she has to come up with just to have a place for her and her kids to live.
Well, I understand that.
Okay.
Very much, and I am very compassionate, and I'm not going to brag about what the things that I do, but I'm a Christian.
Okay.
And from that standpoint, don't make assumptions what you just did about me. That's unfair, and I don't appreciate it.
I said conservatives. Did I say Steve?
You were using me as an example.
No, I said conservatives.
And that's not a conservative idea either. That's not a conservative idea.
Okay.
I got a dumb question, though.
Especially a Christian conservative.
When it comes to civil and constitutional rights, aren't they created to help make personal gain attainable?
Absolutely. And so when you say, but Steve, when you say that, here's what I want to say. I don't know how. This is probably unfair, but I'm going to say it anyway. A person who allegedly grabs women by their private parts lies on a repeated basis like it's a disease that's stuck inside of his throat. And as a Christian, you support that person. That belies everything that I was ever taught about being a Christian.
But here's the problem, Rudy. Okay? I want you to understand this.
You can't explain it away.
Something to you. In our nation right now, our Constitution said rights that are given to us by our Creator. It was understood. Okay? Like you were talking about a while ago. We moved away from the Creator. You have made up your own God, or other people have made up their own God because they don't accept the Bible as inspired. So they make up their own religion. And once man starts making up his own religion and puts himself in control, our society is going to fall because there can be no unity. There can be no authority because everybody has an opinion.
Well,
and that's where we are right now. Everybody has an opinion.
No, but you know what? Let's go by. Let's talk about the good book. There's a couple of examples in the good book when Jesus walked among the lepers. He didn't leave the lepers there and walk by them because they had a disease. He walked among them to help them. Jesus saved the prostitute. Jesus rehabilitated Paul, who was a conniving murderer, and turned him into a disciple. So when you talk about truly understanding the Bible and living by the principles of the Bible, you can't live by some of the principles conservatives want to live by, and you're ignoring the Bible. You can't use the Bible in selective manner. You either accept it or you don't accept it, which is something you said. On the road to Jericho, when the Samaritan helped the Levite, and the Levite hated the Samaritan, and everybody else had walked by him, that's the parable God wants us to understand about how we're supposed to treat our fellow man. Now, that is what we have fallen away from. That's what we have fallen away from.
Let me respond. I agree with everything you said. But do you understand that the character of God is that we have free will? And progressives and liberals want to force. They want to demonize. They want to make people do what they think is right. Jesus didn't do that. If you look in the scriptures, it says that all scripture is for reproof, for correction, for the instruction, so that the man or woman of God is thoroughly furnished for all good works. We have a choice, Rudy, and I would love to come talk to you about religion because that's where we need to start. But understand, if I force you, or you force me to do something, no. But if you can teach me in love, then that's a different thing.
Well, I'm gonna say this to you, and I got another caller here. I gotta get to.
Thank you, Rudy. I appreciate it.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. I just want to say that they have stop signs that force you to stop. They have red lights that force you to stop.
But if you don't, you
go
could
to jail.
get killed.
Yeah.
So it's the reproof and the correction part that we.
Yeah, and we got Winnie. Winnie, how are you, my friend?
All right, how are you?
Okay.
Steve, y'all get it. Y'all get that long conversation.
Yeah, I always get into it with Steve.
Boy,
Yeah,
that's something.
yeah.
Okay, you said something earlier about electoral vote. How can they get rid of that? Well, what year that came about the electoral?
That came out in early on in the 1800s, and the research the research that I did on it is that they originally went to the Electoral College because at the time that the vote was instituted, the ability to communicate with people all across the country was very limited, not like it is now. So they came out with the Electoral College because they felt that if there were representatives in the area that may be much more in tune with the issues than the public at large. That makes some sense for back then when there was no TV, no radio, nothing, so that makes some sense. I can accept the logic. That logic no longer makes sense to me in 2019 because you can get information everywhere. So you're not.
So how can they do away with it?
Well, it would take a vote. I think there's 13 or 14 states that have already signed on to do away with it. But you're going to have a tremendous fight with the conservatives who don't want to do away with the Electoral College. But I just gave you the history for why it was done. Now, they'll tell you that part of it is that the little states have to have representation. Okay, I get all of that too, but each state has 2 senators, okay? So you got a tiny state like Rhode Island that's got 2 senators, the same amount of senators that New York State or California have, who have like 25 times the population. So that was an attempt. That was an attempt by the founding fathers to create some balance. But if you, like I said, when I did the research and I went back and I looked at why they created the Electoral College, I said, you know what, that really made a lot of sense because the limited communications available back then, they kind of depended on a person representative in each area to be able to communicate with the people, which that is no longer necessary.
Oh, that's something, man. So that had Trump water. Ain't that how Obama water too? After let Trump electoral.
No.
Vote?
No. Trump. Obama won straight. Obama won straight away. The issue that started some of the frustration of some of the conservative people, and some of them are going to get really mad when I say this, but this is the truth. Obama won twice, and he never had the majority of the white vote. Never, either time, in 08 or 12. The majority of white folks.
Who had the majority vote? Was minority?
No. What happened was the progressives, the Hispanics, and the blacks and the Asians. I'm sorry, the Asians too. They all came together and they pushed him over the top both times. Now, contrary to what anybody else is going to tell you, because there's very few people that will admit to the truth on this, that really upset a bunch of people because that was the first time in the history of the United States that the white majority did not win the election. So it was at that point that we had voter suppression and gerrymandering and all that other stuff that came about. But that's a fact. It's an uncomfortable fact. I got plenty of friends that they don't bother them with not one lick. They love Obama just as much as I do. So I mean, but I'm just telling you the truth. That's what happened.
It's true. Well, what happened to the other guy? The other guy, he a governor of Massachusetts. He put his name into the hat.
Well, he lost to Obama in 2012.
What's his name?
Mitt Romney.
Who?
Mitt Romney. He's now.
He's a governor of Massachusetts. Oh, he African American.
Oh, he just put his name, Duval Patrick. He just put him. Yeah, he's running. He's going to run for.
You think he might go somewhere?
No. I think I think what's happening. No, I think had he come out in the beginning, there's a lot of people like myself that could have gone all in and to support him because I think he's very capable. He's got a lot of experience and he's very bright. But this now is a plot. In my opinion, this is just my opinion, is a plot to stop Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. They do not want either one of them to win, especially the big money people. And they're putting a lot of money behind candidates to stop Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Just my opinion. That don't make it right. That's just my opinion. But I got to get ready to go. But thank you, my friend, for
we'll
always you always a good. She's always a faithful listener.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Steve's a faithful listener, too, though.
Huh?
Steve is a faithful listener, too.
Yes, he is. Yes, yes.
Yeah, because, and that's the secret of being a great radio host, you know. You don't have to win everybody over, because the people that love you, they're going to listen to you. But the people that don't like you, they're going to listen to see what that asshole's going to say next.
Yeah, and Chuck, out to you. I know you found out what I told you a couple weeks ago about Social Security and your taxes is true, but I want you to know you can file an amended return and get those taxes paid up so they don't come and grab you and want to take you to jail. Mm-hmm. But okay, folks, we're leaving a little early tonight. IRSC basketball, I got to get that corrected, IRSC basketball with Greg Wyatt, and you will have Cliff. And I want to say thank you so much for tuning in to the African American scene. God bless and be safe, and I will see you next Wednesday for the African American scene.
The African American scene with Rudy Howard. Archives of this show are on YouTube. Look for WPSL TV or go to WPSLTV.com and look for the African American scene and the archive from WPSL.